And now, live from the studios of Freedom's Phoenix, Ernest Hancock.
Yeah, playing some Pink Floyd here and declare your independence of me, Ernest Hancock, cause I can. Cause I can. You know, that's a good enough reason right there. You know, the one thing I wanted to make sure that you got from Bob Prechter is that he's going to be included in the next edition of Freedom's Phoenix digital magazine. And he has some stuff he wants to do generally on freedom. You know, this is, you know, he has an opinion. He's been a real supporter of Freedom's Phoenix. He's one of our first advertisers back in the day. And a lot of times, you know, there's a lot of people that would be critical of his views, okay? Now, even though, you know, being right doesn't matter if it's not what you want. And a lot of times his opinion will overlap with a lot of the other guys, you know, but this is the one thing that I found fascinating. There is a... I wouldn't say if it's I mean, you just look at the past track record. I mean, you know, you look at it, a macro view of the planet, and there are, you know, waves. You see patterns, and they call them fractals. I first became exposed to this concept, and Butler Schaefer talks about this a lot too, in chaos theory, spontaneous order, that kind of thing. You know, and a lot of people, they'll look at fundamentals. There are fundamentals that are involved in this happens every freaking time. That's the way it is. You can't get away from it. Very valid, very true. The problem is that what caused the fundamentals? You know, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Something did that. Can you predict human behavior? Well, I mean, you know, it's very spontaneous. Man, it just, from out of the blue. But do you get the Matrix? It was a perfect example. If you have billions of minds plugged into the Matrix, there's a high propensity that one of them is going to be like, hey, man, I'm taking red pills. So that was the point in the Matrix trilogy, is that they go, hey, man, by the time you get through the second or third one, they're going, look, man, you're number 6, 7. You know, we've been going through this cycle. We in fact, there's such a variable that sooner or later, the people rise up. They rise up. That we have created a steam valve for that very thing. We created, you know, hear me, Zion, I'm, you know, and that's down where it's warm in the core, and the people kind of hide and think they're autonomous from the controls of, and then here comes the machines. We have been fighting this machine for 100 years, okay? The opening that we have at the top of each hour is Morpheus in the cave in the second Matrix movie. That's where that comes from. It's a cycle. That's why they call it revolution. It goes round and round and round and repeats. So, I remember there was Nova, PBS, History Channel, whatever it was. It was a special years ago. I mean, it must have been at least a decade ago. That I saw where they were talking about chaos theory and how small changes have an enormous impact years, if not decades, if not century, if not millennia, into the future. How? When you introduce certain concepts, realizations at a formative stage, and you see this in science fiction a lot, you see L. Neil Smith's probability brooch. That whole book was on the idea of one word got changed in a parallel universe, changed the entire course of history. It was the word unanimous. In the Declaration of Independence, it said consent of the governed. I think it was Ben Franklin that convinced Thomas Jefferson to take unanimous consent out and just make it consent. Jefferson understood. He's going, no, if you got one guy doesn't like it, you know, it's like it doesn't apply to him. Well, they're going, no, we need to have it a majority kind of thing. You know, consent of the governed, what the heck that means. So Jefferson's first instinct was unanimous consent. Look, man, if I don't consent to it, guess what? It doesn't apply to me. Well, you know, the politically correct thought was, you know, invaded humanity since forever, including here comes Ben Franklin. So what L. Neil Smith had in the book, The Probability Approach, the parallel universe where you would go and there would be much more freedom, a totally different society based on non-coercion, was because during the Whiskey Rebellion, after the Constitution, and here comes George Washington and so on, because in that parallel universe, unanimous was left in the Declaration of Independence, it had an impact on the Whiskey Rebellion guys, and they refused to surrender, and George Washington was hung as a traitor to the Revolution. Totally different mindset, different direction that was taken because of one word. This is why we spend so much time on things like the Arabic revolutions going on in Arabia, in Arabic-speaking countries in the Middle East. We knew that if we could inject just a little bit in Arabic, the philosophy of liberty, the 14-year-olds and them get, we already had an impact that's going to last forever and always, and we may already be seeing the manifestation of that. Certainly within, a few years, decades, centuries, because somebody took the time to have this concept infecting that generation next. Here we have the easing. There have been a lot of people commenting. They're very complimentary of it. Some people have criticisms, back and forth. But a lot of the criticisms comes from people that they don't understand the function of the easing to begin with. I want to explain this to you because this is important to know. We'll be going to PorcFest. PORCFEST 2011.com. PorcFest as in Porcupine Festival. So PORC, not K. PorcFest2011.com. The big advantage to going to so many activists that it has nothing to do with whether they're voting or not or who and candidates and all that. That's not the point. They're sharing the truth, their perspective in creative ways from a base foundational cultural aspect of this country, of their generation. That is the future. This agorist mentality that what's going to survive after all this crap that has been built up on supposedly a foundation of freedom of the Declaration of Independence in this country, or just a concept that people could even support or have, written such a document. I mean, just that in and of itself, as we're going into the 4th of July here, to support what? It's reclaim it. It's not about, how much fireworks we have and so on, going off with a permit, from the man downtown. I mean, come on, Adam Kokesh, has a piece that kind of talks about that. So what we want to do is we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to virally take this PDF file, less than 5 megabytes, 83 pages, less than 5 megabytes, that you could email to everybody and their grandmother. Go to Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com right now. You go there and you'll see at the top right a link to the magazine. Now, subscription gives you all kinds of different, interactive ability with, blah, 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 a lot more tools and so on. And we're doing tutorials to detail that because it's way more than you can understand from me just telling you. Because, damn, 6 years we built this thing on to make every one of you, an individual, the most effective activist in your community with clicks of a mouse. Yeah, you don't think so? Yeah, you just start watching tutorials and they start coming, because we've been doing this because I know. I don't think I know, man. I've been nose to grindstone active going up against the biggest guys since forever. And I'm telling you, I know what tools I needed, what I'd like to do, and what made it a lot easier and faster for me to do it. We have created the site, not just to serve exactly what I wanted, but to make sure that you get all the tools that I enjoy. And, the people that subscribe to Freedom Speaks, man, it's like, woo, man, I'm glad I have this. Well, we're going to be detailing it in the tutorials. We're starting to do them now. There's so much stuff that we have to do to make sure that we have them to be able to demonstrate to you so that you can make use of them. But when we come back, I'll tell you what the foundation of this whole easing thing is and why, and what we expect to happen in the future because of it's just a butterfly wing. Oh, but here comes a typhoon. You stay right there. We'll be right back.